think it was a church, but it was some sort of public space
Right,
where they would
right.
set out tables
Sure.
and everybody would come and have their cabbage soup. So Rosie, bless her, she was noticing that the tablecloths were not in great shape after the meals, and she was actually taking them home to the apartment where she was living. I guess she had a washing machine, and she was cleaning them. And then she'd bring them back the next day in, white, pristine form again. And she said to her, that little thing,
Right.
Was
The action
kind
was
of in the sphere that she was in at that moment, in the village that she was in Russia. That was global citizenship for
right.
her.
Interesting.
She said to her that was all part of just being a global citizen. So, and she admitted, it's just a little thing, and it's just a limited group of people. But of course, it was a group of people that she had specifically reached out to. So that
Right.
was one story that was very memorable. I suppose some of the other folks that were memorable, Maud Barlow, who's very well known worldwide as a water rights activist,
Right.
an environmental activist. She, for a time, was the leader of the Council of Canadians. Her story was just very interesting to me because she had started out working for Pierre Trudeau at the
Right.
time, that I think even before Trudeau had gone to national office in Canada. She had started working for him in, I think, the province of Quebec.
Right.
And then had moved up to national politics, kind of alongside his career.
Yep.
And then was very much, I think, an activist for the Canadian middle class and the Canadian way of life vis-a-vis the global economy, trying to, in some cases, articulate the interest of everyday working class Canadians
Right,
who were
right.
threatened in some ways
Yeah.
by economic dynamics. And then in the 1990s, she said to me her critical moment when she began to think of herself as a global citizen was during a campaign in the mid-1990s, maybe even mid to late 1990s, when several of the G7 countries were pushing the multilateral
Right.
agreement on investment. And for Maud Barlow, she saw that as a bill of rights for corporations,
Yeah.
not for people.
Yeah.
So she began to organize with all sorts of interest groups, labor unions, environmental groups, professional associations that would be adversely impacted. They stopped that thing dead in its tracks. We don't have a multilateral agreement on investment today. I think some bits and pieces of it have kind of made their way into national laws, but that bit the dust. And Maud Barlow said to me in her interview that was at that point when she saw herself as a global citizen activist and a part of a larger movement as
Right.
well, fighting it. And she, of course, went on to be out in Seattle at the famous World Trade Organization meeting that went nowhere when there was supposed to be a new round of talks. So
Right.
I'm not saying that global citizens by definition are always there to be thorns in the side of economic globalization, or that they're always sharing a particular conception of justice that they're working to implement in global terms. But for Maud Barlow, that was really it. But I was impressed by how she had started out in her local community. And that she saw what she was doing not in isolation from her local or national citizenship, but she
right.
brought it all together. So that was
So the
impressive
national
about her story.
and the national and the global, the international are tied together. In a way.
Interactive. And maybe because, I think there can be Americans also concerned about how decisions from the U.S. government might adversely affect certain groups in the
Right.
U.S. But Barlow, maybe being from Canada, she also thought that there were various ways Canada, as a country, that its own definition of its interests were
Right.
going to be adversely impacted. So very, very expressly political
Interesting.
approach to her work as a global citizen.